Hello and welcome to another edition of Choose to Challenge. Happy holidays to all of you. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Choose to Challenge is a platform designed to inspire, motivate, and elevate people beyond their boundaries, whether they're physical boundaries, institutional boundaries, mental boundaries, anything that is serving as impediments from you elevating and achieving the highest version of yourself. This is a platform that is very challenging and sometimes controversial in the topics that we bring to the table because they're topics that most people don't want to talk about. There's things that can make us a little bit uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, my guests come with solutions on what we can do to make the world a better place. And I'm so excited because today I have a friend, partner, and just a brilliant soul joining me today, Miss Jacqueline, Lulu Brown. How's it going?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And today, very interesting topic. We're going to be talking about the paradox between holidays and domestic violence. And we say paradox because typically when we're thinking about the holiday season, we're thinking about joy and laughter and family and community and sharing and gift giving and all the wonderful components of it. But in the throes of what the holidays bring, there are some dark sides. There are things that people are going through, depression, anger, resentment, that unfortunately cause them to lash out, if you will, to those closest to them. And we find a lot of individuals are victimized at this time of the year, whether they're spouses, loved ones, even children. And we're going to get into that topic. But before we dive deep, I want to tell the audience a little bit about all the amazing things that you do, Lulu. So Lulu is a 40-plus year IT executive. She worked with information technology and the engineering arena on a global scale. And during her journey, she found herself tugged by the experiences of women. She found that women were struggling with, as she says, their unsaid. And we'll get into what that means. And I think part of this whole domestic suffering is some of that unsaid. And in 2010, she found herself pricked, as most of us, when there's something that tugs at our heart, we find ourselves being led down a new corridor, which ultimately opens the door to our new calling. And she now has a passion. She is on a trailblazing mission to help women around the world to truly elevate to their best and highest version, to help them realize that there are no skies, there's no limits, but you have to first believe in that, and you have to embrace all the brilliance that is you. She is also a transformative speaker. She's a certified coach. She's an elevation leader. She's a minister, and she is a woman who has a heart for God and a heart for the people. And without further ado, we want to talk a little bit about this. I'm going to say the revolutionary in Jacqueline Lulu Brown, which is actually now the name of her company, Revolution Ascension. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. Thank you for choosing to challenge and have these dialogues and this conversation today. So thank you so much. I honor you for that.
Thank you. So Lulu, you got RA behind you. So we know that stands for Revolution Ascension.
Yes.
And you picked the term revolution as part of your business name. So you've got revolution, which is about fighting change, right? You're resisting, you're You're breaking through things when we think about revolution. And then you have paired it with ascension. And so you've got this forceful energy paired with this calming energy of rising, of elevating. I'd like you to talk a little bit about why you came up with that name and what it means today with this topic as we talk about, again, we've got a soft energy and a hard energy, right? The holiday season is a very soft, calming, peaceful energy for many people, but for others, there's this force, there's this fight happening.
Thank you. Revolution Ascension. And I'm going to be totally transparent here. Revolution Ascension came about with me speaking with someone that was providing me with what I call, they were leaving it at mentoring, but I was kind of like, you're my therapist, you're my mentor, you're my coach, and literally my guide when I was coming through my journey. And as I was coming, I guess you can say, the other side of my journey, and we were talking one day, and I said, well, if I move forward, because now I've come through a process, and if I take that as a blueprint and bring other women through that process, and I said, but, I need a name. And so we started brainstorming. And based on the conversations that we had, because she would say, oh, wait, right there. And she would say, oh my God, when you're talking about these things, your passion, it gives me goosebumps. And I kept using the word revolution. And then I was talking about ascending, and she said, oh, revolution ascension. And that was it. And to this day, I am so grateful to her, and I will give her a shout out. And her name is Melissa Crawford, and she is known as the Queen Code. She's written a couple of books, Good to Great, and then The Queen Code is one of her other books. And I always have to literally give that tribute, because through that brainstorming, she really she got I'm going to say that, as you said, energy, and grabbed it and said, that's it, Revolution Ascension.
I love that. And isn't it amazing how when we go through our life's journey, there are individuals around us that are able to hear us clearly and see clearly what it is that we're trying to articulate and embody. And as you said, she was the guide and was able to say, wait, let's pull this, and let's marry the two together. And in doing so, what I've noticed in the years that I've known you is it's gifted you. I think the gift was always inherent in you, or innately in you, but it came to the top, where you actually look at life through a dual lens. You look at it through this aggressiveness, no nonsense. I'm not standing for injustice. We got to change things, again, that revolutionary, but yet there's a very soft energy that lovingly guides people, because as a coach, you have to be really careful with that, right? When people are being very transparent with you, that you handle them in a way that they can see clearly, but it's almost like a timed release of the things that they need to see. Because sometimes as you're digging deep and peeling back that onion, it can be a little bit overwhelming emotionally, right?
Yes, absolutely. What's really important is that, one, we understand our calling and we understand where the lanes shift. And you said something really important, that when you're peeling back that onion, there are times that we cannot confuse consulting, and all about consulting, versus coaching, because they are two different things. But then there's counseling. And as a minister, I do ministerial counseling. But now there's another layer when you're peeling back that onion, and that is our mental health and our mental wellness. And we have to be very careful that we are providing assistance that may be outside of ourselves. So making sure that we have those partnerships so that when someone gets to that place, we are not operating in a space that we should not be operating in. And that's why partnerships and coming together is very important, so that as women, and I keep going back to choose to challenge, as we choose to challenge, we want to make sure that we embody as women coming together, that I can call you or I can call someone in the mental health area, so that we are providing what people need versus us trying to be one-stop shopping.
And I love that you said that, and that's why I put this disclaimer here for our viewing audience. We are here with Jacqueline and Lulu Brown talking about the paradox between holidays and domestic violence. But this show is for infotainment purposes only. If you find yourself in a state of mental anguish, victimization, have physical health concerns, please reach out to the authorities, to your mental health professionals for the support that you need. Again, this show is for infotainment purposes only, to create awareness. But if you are in a state of crises, please reach out to those who can support you. So let's dig a little bit deeper into this. I noticed over the past couple weeks, you've had posts about domestic violence during the holidays. What was it that caught your eye about this topic? Is it something that you've experienced, you know people have experienced, or you just have an awareness that this is an area of focus that we need to hone in on at this time?
So I'm going to say all of the above, being totally transparent. There are things that I've experienced. There are things that people close to me have experienced. I've experienced that up and close and personal with others. And then the knowledge of just going out there and just looking at the information. And as I was sitting, as we were coming out of Domestic Violence Month, and I said, so when October is over, and November 1 comes or Thanksgiving comes, what happens then? Because there is an increase in suicide rates, domestic violence, because of just the pressure of the holidays. And everyone does not have the ability or the capability by themselves to go through that. And I think that, one, we want others to be aware. And I often tell people, if we're having a webinar and if they may not be experiencing this, but come and learn and get some insight, because you might know someone that is experiencing it. And if you've got that, as you said, that dual lens now that you can see and the light bulb goes off, you can steer that person in a direction to get the help that they need.
I think that that's so important and very timely, because I remember during the height of the pandemic, there was the growing concern about the number of individuals who were now suffering with mental stress, mental anxiety, mental illness. It was bubbling to the surface because we are social beings, right? And we're now forced to be in isolation. But we did not have the number of providers to care for the increasing need. And it's still greatly off balance. I also was looking at some information in Europe during the peak of their crises. And countries like France, for example, they were reporting astronomical numbers of growing domestic abuse. And so when we think about that, you may have been a victim before, right? But you had that break. Maybe the abuser was going to work or you were going to work. But now, here you are, 24/7 at their mercy. Now that the world has opened up, so many of us who may not be in that state of of pain, panic, or anxiety may not give much thought to it because it's, it's not our immediate experience. But I love what you said. When you have a sense of awareness, now, your spidey senses are up, right? It's not like you're looking for it, but if you see certain signs, you don't dismiss it as you might have at another time in your life, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. This time of the year, there's so much pressure. Now, let's leave the pandemic on the side for just a moment. This time of the year is a time where everyone is not running around singing jingle bells. It's a time of the year that heightens sometimes sadness. There's already this seasonal time where people become very sad and they don't necessarily understand it. People lash out, and that's where the abuse comes. And then there's the pressure and the way holidays are commercialized. It's, you got to have money to buy this, you got to have money to buy that. What about the parents that have children? And there's all this peer pressure. What are you getting? I'm getting this, I'm getting that. And you're trying to provide for your children because that's what they want. And that's a lot of pressure. And when you have a lot of other things going on, sometimes it's not easy to hold it all together. And the stigma of not holding it together really shouldn't be there. It should be, how do we help one another versus people being ashamed to talk about it? And that's where I go into the unsaid things that we need to talk about, but we really never do. Now let's take and bring in everything from the pandemic. And there is still a lot that we are dealing with emotionally and mentally from the pandemic. You touched on that, being in the household with someone 24/7, just about, where we had that break before. That's really heavy. And now you take, and we're coming out of that. But what about everything that happened during that period of time that maybe is not being addressed? And now you bring the holidays on top of that. And a lot of things can happen that normally will not happen in, I'm going to say, July or in the middle of the summer. There are pockets of times during, the calendar year that actually they just trigger these emotions. And I never want to denigrate. It's awful for someone to suffer from abuse. But there's two questions to be asked. One, what is the root of what's causing the abuser to be abusive? That help that they need. We can get very angry, but what is the root? Because I really don't believe that a person wakes up in the morning and says, let me see who I can abuse today. I think this is something that goes much deeper. And then there's the person that is suffering. And how do we help them and make them comfortable with speaking the unsaid and getting the help? So these are really important things. And I would love to see more attention. I'm trying to bring awareness as much as I can and point people in the right direction to get the help that they need. But I would really like to see this sort of a little more attention to it. Maybe not as much as in October, because that's a designated month for us to really understand that domestic abuse is real. But I think during this holiday time, rather than a lot of statistics, suicide rates up, home abusive relationships are up. And that is not just with spouses and partners. What about the children? What about the abuse that they go through as a result of what's happening with the adults during the holidays? So it's something that I keep going back to choose the challenge, because your this choose the challenge is really speaking to, we have to choose to challenge what happens during the holidays and challenge the lack of, I'm going to say, help and people talking about it. Because someone watching is going to realize that, gee, I could really talk about this. I could really dial a number and get help. And there's no shame, there's no denigration. It doesn't mean that they're less than they are. It just means that they're experiencing something that they need help with.
Yes. I like that's synopsis that you gave. And like you said, with the questions for the abuser, what is the root? There's always a trigger. And sometimes that trigger is based in a childhood experience that was never dealt with. Yes. Right? So you face some sort of emotional trauma as a child. You buried it because children are good at suppressing, and then it comes up in other ways. Mm-hmm. And when we look at where we are now, so world has opened up, and then what do we hit with? Economic crises. Yeah. And like you said, and the holidays. So it's like, I may have lost my job. I may be now employed again, possibly underemployed. The cost of living, inflation, right? So my dollar isn't going as far. And then I've got the kids and everybody else saying what they want for the holidays. And I have pressure about, I've got to be at this Christmas party, that Christmas party. Yes. I need a new dress. It can be overwhelming.
Yes, it can. LaWanna, I'm sure this is something that you have great insight into. But what really I've never been able to, I'll say, wrap my noodle around is corporations seem to always pick this time of the year when people are getting laid off. Look at what's going on at Twitter. And I'm like, okay, you're thinking that, okay, I'm going to, kind of sort of be able to make it through. And then you're hit with something like this. And I can remember working in corporate and actually having to lay people off and make that decision. Who are you going to let go in not the beginning of the end of November, just before the holidays? And I'm sure there's a reason behind P&L and carrying things over to the next year. But sometimes I say to myself, wow, could we just not do it during this time of the year? Because to your point, that is very, very difficult. Now you don't have a job. Now you don't know how you're going to provide. And going back to the peer pressure, we've got the commercials. We've got our children that all they see is everything that's just coming at them in the commercials, what they see their friends with, and they want that. Why? Because that helps them to fit in. Everybody else has it. That's what I want. And parents trying to meet those challenges, it's really difficult sometimes.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, there are fiscal reasons that companies say, okay, our fiscal year starts in January, so we unfortunately want to clear things out for and not have them carry over. And I know I was working with this consulting company, and we landed a major contract. I was so excited. And I was brought on in October, and it was a 2-year contract. And so I go on holiday, during the holiday season. I get a call the day before Christmas that says, LaWanna, they're cutting half of those that are on this contract, and your division is one that's going away. And I'm like, what? And of course, I'm thinking, not spending outside of my means, but knowing what I had. So I go on this great holiday vacation. I'm buying all these gifts, and I'm like, oh, that was the worst time. And I thought, are you kidding me? I said, really? And they were like, yeah. I said, effective when? Immediately. Because with consultants,
Right.
They're not giving you 2, 3, 4 weeks. It's like, no, it's cut.
And there's no severance pay.
There's no summer, right? Yeah. So again, I know how that felt, and it was, and then you're trying to enjoy the holidays, right? But that's in the back of your mind, and you're right. I hear it on the news every day. I mean, some of the biggest, most celebrated companies are just laying off left and right now.
It's really tough. And when you think about, you said something that was key, that these roots and childhood trauma. And one of the things that can be very difficult is someone that came through life as a child being very poor. That's a trigger for them not to be able to provide for their family now. Because we have these things that we say, I'm never going to have my children go through that. I'm never going to have my family go through that, because we remember what it was like to be without. And we don't want our loved ones to go through that. So now there are triggers that are happening because they're thinking about that trauma they experienced as a child. They are thinking about how they were picked on as and bullied as a child because maybe they didn't have the nice new whatever it was back then, whether it was a sneaker or whether it was a jacket or whatever. They didn't have the latest greatest toy, and now they may be bullied, they may get picked on. All of those things are at the core of that childhood trauma, and the pressure to make sure that their family never experiences that. That right there can escalate into verbal abuse, physical abuse, and even mental abuse. There's different types of abuse. And sometimes there's the abuse of it's never enough. You're doing, but maybe you're in a relationship where it's never enough because the individual again has that childhood trauma. So it's like, no, more, more, more. And they're driven. These are all types of mental things that are real. And if we don't talk about it, if we keep it unsaid, then how do we heal from it? How do we get better? And most of all, how do we not let those triggers negatively impact those that we love?
I love that. We're going to take a little break, and then we'll be back to talk a little bit more about the paradox between the holidays and domestic violence.
Once upon a time, I was out of breathing room. I didn't know what it was called, but I love having a label for it. So if we can define it, we can address it. And so breathing room is that space between your current pace and your limits and your abilities. So in breathing room, it's really important that we have that space between what we are capable of doing and what our limits are. And it's a very important concept, and is catching on fire with our mommies and our women in our little corner of the world. And I'm so pleased that we will learn more, we will be happier people, and not so stressed out, and we will operate in the love zone and not the fear zone.
Talk about the economy and, like you said, the pressure. Think about individuals now trying to buy homes, and for a first-time home buyer, it's almost unaffordable, especially with the interest rates, which are rising, which aren't at historic highs, but still so much higher than the 2%, 3% that we had a year ago. And even those that are renting, the average rent is over $1,800 a month. And when you're looking at the average combined household income is $50,000, it's a little tight. So I'm grateful for you coming onto this conversation, because I think it's important that we become aware, and those of you who are out there that find yourself fortunate or blessed, whether it's financially or in a loving family environment, just realize if you look to your left and to your right, I guarantee you 1 out of the 3 is either going through some financial hardship, emotional hardship, or physical hardship, right? One of those 3, someone is facing. And I would like you, Lulu, to talk a little bit, because you were talking about the types of, or giving us the categories of domestic abuse. So can you help unpackage what that looks like? Because some people have in their mind domestic violence means someone is getting physically accosted, right? But it's not always the physical.
That's very true. Mental abuse can leave scars, just like physical abuse. And mental abuse, those scars you can't really see. Physical abuse, sometimes the scars heal and go away and they don't leave marks. Emotional and mental abuse leave scars that are not visible to us. And particularly during times of holiday, such as we're talking about, there can be that mental and emotional abuse where someone is constantly arguing with you. And I use the example of it never being enough. And it could be something as simple as the tree doesn't have enough candy canes on it. There are not enough popcorn balls on it, or whatever the decoration is. And the individual is like, that's not enough. Go find more. That's not enough. Go find more. And it just starts to escalate. And, well, where did you go? Well, why didn't you go where I told you to go? And it just starts building and building. And then that person that is the recipient of that is beginning to feel that pressure. And they're feeling like, oh my God, I can't go home until I drive to however many stores. And when you get to a place where you are feeling that you are afraid to go home to deal with the consequences of not being able to fulfill the request, that is a type of abuse. Anything that brings anxiety and discomfort, that's a form of abuse. And what happens is our body goes into that fight flight. Now we're just, okay, well, what do I do? And that breaks us down. It breaks us down physically, because we know stress is, they talk about the heart attacks and the all the different things that and what the rates are for death. Stress is at the root of a lot of that. And that stress is because of the abuse, but because someone is not going into an emergency room physically battered, people don't see that as a type of abuse. But when expectations are forced on someone that it is literally impossible for them to fulfill, they can't control it, but someone else is expecting them to be able to control it. And then there are these verbal consequences when they are unable to meet that person's expectations. That's one example of the emotional and mental abuse. And honestly, even in ministerial counseling or coaching, I hear the stories, and people have become, I'm going to say, desensitized to it. It's normalized, but that's not really normal when someone is treating another individual that way. But we live in a world where people are beginning to normalize things that are certainly not normal.
I agree with that. I think that there are many instances where we become desensitized, or we we enable the bad behavior by making excuses for it, by accommodating the abuser, by saying, well, they didn't mean it, they're working really hard. It's like, instead of saying, wait a minute, we need to have a conversation. So this goes back to, again, what you help women to understand, loving and protecting yourself to the point that if you are, we're not saying ever put yourself in harm's way, but go, and then again, the information is below here, contact authorities, people who can help you, especially if you need to get out to protect the safety of yourself and or your children. There is a way that professionals can help you navigate that. And the frightening thing is, we hear it throughout the year, and we know gun violence is on the rise. But to hear where an individual takes out his or herself and the family, right? Because something has happened, and it's not just this one moment of, I just exploded and I snapped. It builds. There's something that has just continued to just compound, and we all have a breaking point. I mean, we can say, I would never, ever do that. We don't know. But if we're aware of, like, what's triggering me, why did I just go from 0 to 100 because my child happened to knock a cup on the floor? Something's deeper. Like you said, the root. Why am I always angry? Why am I so agitated? And it could be, again, the pressure, knowing that you're not earning enough to take care of your family, or maybe you feel sandwiched. You and I, we talk about it, living not where our senior parents are and having to fly back and forth to be there. And if you're not guarded, and for me and for you, tapping into our source of God, being that peace and that guide, it's easy to get frustrated and agitated. It's easy to go there, right?
Absolutely. LaWanna, that's why support groups are so important. Support groups for those that are caring for their parents. And there's a lot that goes into that. The support groups are there so that, one, you're realizing you're not all alone in this, that there are other people that are going through the same experiences that you are. And there's coming together and providing each other strength, or just an understanding. Having someone listen to say, you know what? I understand. I get it. Just that coming together helps a lot. But pulling on all of the resources, and I'm so glad that on the bottom of the screen, you have the numbers for people to reach out and contact people to get help. There are lots of resources available. And I love the word that you said, navigate, because sometimes it's not a quick fix. It's not, you just put magic dust on it. I used to say to my son, I don't have any more magic dust. You know how they just think moms, and this is when he was younger, and they just think moms just magically make everything all better. And I was like, you know what? I have no more fairy dust, is what I said to him. But in what we're talking about now, there really is no fairy dust to make everything better instantly. So there's a process, there's time, and everyone's situation is very different. And that's why it's so important to reach out to those that are going to provide the empathy and the understanding, the guidance, the leadership. And it does not necessarily mean that you're the answer. So for our listening audience, if you believe or see the signs of some type of abuse, you might want to just kind of get a dialogue going where someone is comfortable with talking with you, speaking that unsaid without judgment. And then that can lead to them getting help. But sometimes people just need someone that they can trust, that they don't feel is going to judge them. And that's really, really important, especially in times like this, because for whatever reason, as human beings, we just don't always feel like being transparent. It's not always easy to be transparent, but with things such as domestic violence and abuse, we absolutely have to be transparent, because transparency can save our lives. It can save the lives of our loved ones. So that becomes extremely important.
Yeah, to our listening audience, again, we're here talking about the paradox between the holidays and domestic violence. And we know that domestic violence happens throughout the year, but we really want to talk about the added pressure from the holidays that may make your households a little less joyful during this time of the year. And try to have those conversations. And if you can't have it with the person or persons who's creating this turmoil around you, I loved what you said, Lulu, having that support group, calling the crisis hotline, talking to professionals who can help guide you in what you need to do. And sometimes when we're talking to individuals who have a similar lived experience, as you mentioned, now we don't feel like we're in it all by ourselves. Our situation is unique, and it's independent of other people's experiences, but there's a sense of understanding. And I want to bring this up because there's another little twist to the domestic violence situation. And as you mentioned, it can be mental, physical, or emotional. For the care provider who may find themselves being a victim of that family member who they're caring for. And I know that for me, it's been good to, again, be in groups to talk and to have an awareness that when a loved one is in a state where they're no longer able to do what they used to do, may have a level of dependency that they didn't have to have previously. We have no idea what's going on with them mentally or emotionally. So if we come from a place of compassion and empathy, yeah, you may take a few hits. Mom or dad may snap occasionally, but it's not at you. When you understand, it's really not you. It's this new life. It's a new normal that they were having to adjust to. And, like I know when I was talking to my dad, and at one point he had snapped at me, and I was like, wow, I said, I come here, flying back and forth. I said, really? That's how you're going to talk to me? And I walked away, and it really hurt me. And my dad called me back, and he said, I'm sorry, it's not you. He was just getting so frustrated that what used to be simple no longer was. And that one moment literally changed how I looked at things. I'm like, okay, LaWanna, you need to pause. You need to develop a little more patience. You don't know what's going on in his head. You don't know what he's feeling emotionally. There's physical restrictions now, right? So I think there's, again, even sometimes being if you want to say, you felt victimized, whether it's coming at you from your child, from your spouse, from a loved one, from a parent, try to just understand, as you said, if you can identify the root, it may help you to allay things a little bit better. But again, if you're getting into a point where it's at a point where it can escalate to something very ugly and dangerous, you've got to reach out. You've got to get the support and the help to protect your well-being, that of the other person, and any children that may be involved, right?
Absolutely. When you were giving the description with your dad, and I was thinking it could be something as simple as decorating the tree. The parent could be used to being that person that has that special touch, or just being needed during the holiday. Maybe
Right.
they did a lot of cooking, a lot of baking. Maybe they were the person that made the gingerbread house. Maybe they did the things that the grandchildren like the most. Maybe they did shopping. Maybe that was, their gifting, and they could go out and find the best bargains. All of those things were part of their life. And it was what made them who they are. It's like, I'm good at baking, I'm good at shopping, I'm good at doing all these things. And then all of a sudden, they can't do those things anymore. And it will cause them to lash out. It'll cause them to literally have a disdain for the holidays, because the holiday reminds them of what they can no longer do. To your point, it's very important that we kind of pick up on those things, and that we are getting help for ourselves for better understanding, but that we're also getting help for them to help them through it as well. These are things that sound like it's not that big of a deal. It really is. It truly is. There's so many different types of abuse. Now, let's go from the parent lashing back out at the caregiver or the child to caregivers abusing parents at this time of the year. Things are not going the way that they want. And all of a sudden, now they got one more thing over here that they have to take care of. And the pressure is on. So they're in the pressure cooker, and they've got so much on their plate. And let's say they got laid off, and there's all these other responsibilities they have. And now they are the caregiver. That is a lot of pressure, and not consciously. A lot of times this can be unconscious. They may be verbally abusive to the person that they're caring for. They, God forbid, that they're physically abusive, but this does happen. How often do we hear the elderly are being physically abused? But also verbal abuse, the way that they may speak to the person that they care for. So, it kind of, as they say, the door swings both ways. So
Yes.
if you're a caregiver and you find yourself getting agitated, there are support groups out there that can help you. People that can identify with the pressure that you're under. There's no condemnation at all. This is just getting the help that we all need, and us helping one another. So I don't want people to ever feel like, well, I can't tell anybody that I was verbally abusive to someone that they're caring for. It could be a spouse. What about the spouse that has cancer and the other spouse is the caregiver? Doesn't necessarily mean an elderly person. And there's so much pressure on the spouse that's caring. They may get impatient. They may decide that, I just can't take this anymore. Again, support. Us not judging or condemning one another, but actually putting ourselves in their shoes and just closing our eyes for a minute and saying, wow, how would I feel if I was in that situation? And it will definitely change the way that we think about other people as well as other situations. It'll kind of turn it around a little bit. And I think we'll show more love, because while this is supposed to be the season of love and joy, well, look at what's happening. There's so much division. And the greatest way for us to sort of kind of be the I call it the healing balm that you put on something is really for us to have more empathy, but really more divine love. That part of us down on the inside that was given to us. We just need to find the key, unlock it, and let that flow forward and just be helpers one to another.
Lulu, I'm going to take myself down, give you about 2 minutes, and then I will be back.
Thank you so much, LaWanna. I just want to say to our listening audience is that please remember that reaching out for one another in love and in empathy and in understanding is the greatest gift that we can give to one another during this holiday season. And what I would love to offer to all of the listeners here is that I will give you a 30-minute free consultation. So, what does that mean? That means that I will send you, should you sign up for it, I will send you a form, and it's an intake form. And the reason I send that form out is because I want you to get the most out of this free 30-minute consultation. It's for you to talk about what's on your heart. Here's something that I hold firm to, and I tell people when I give this free 30-minute consultation, I am not going to try to sell you something. I am going to send you a questionnaire, and we are going to talk about what you wrote on that questionnaire. And in that 30 minutes, how you can become on a road, get on a road that is going to take you to your highest level of who you are and ascend to your highest self. There's this place that I love to say, there is no sky, there are no limits except the ones we set for ourselves. So how do you schedule that? You go on our business Facebook page. It's super easy. Everyone is on social media. And we're on facebook.com/Revolution Ascension. And right there on the page, there's a book button. When you click on that, the calendar pops up, and all you have to do is select a date and time that's open, and you will hear back from us. We will send you your questionnaire, and we can schedule our session to help you talk about your unsaid. And if you don't have any unsaid, well, you must have something that you'd like to accomplish in 2023. Let us kind of start helping to guide you and to help you navigate 2023. You can get a lot done in 30 minutes. Trust me on that one. So I look forward to having a session with you, but I encourage you to take that free 30 minutes. If you just want to talk about what we're talking about here during the holidays, we have listening ears, we have empathetic hearts, and most of all, we have divine love to help you in any situation that you find yourself in. And that does mean guiding and giving you options to seek other services. I love to think of myself as someone that is a wealth of knowledge of other resources. So we also point you in the right direction where you can get the help that you need, regardless of what that situation might be. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you sign up for that free 30-minute consultation with us. Thank you, LaWanna.
Thank you so much, Lulu. It's been a pleasure having you on this platform. All of Lulu's information is below, revolutionascension@gmail.com. You can find her on all things social media under her name, Jacqueline Lulu Brown, or Revolution Ascension. And as she mentioned, her free 30-minute consultation on her Facebook community, facebook.com/Revolution Ascension. So we wish you well, be safe during this holiday season. And Lulu, thank you again so very much for joining me. To our listening audience, we look forward to seeing you again next week for another edition of Choose to Challenge. And please remember that in life and in business, don't settle. Be willing to push the envelope. As Lulu says, remember there's no sky, no limit. Shift your thinking, rise up to the greatness that is intended for you, and always choose to challenge. Until next time, goodbye, everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
That's what Christmas is. The stockings filled with candy canes, the sparkling colored lights, and peace to everyone on earth. God bless this holy night, our favorite holiday, 'cause Santa's on his way. This is Christmas, Christmas.